Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Thank you for joining me here tonight. My name is Alyssa Thomas from Penguin and Fish, where we make lovely and quirky hand embroidery kits. And I'm here every weeknight at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. That's 9:30 Eastern and 6:30 Pacific. And it's a time that we can relax and craft together for about an hour. And I typically work on projects from beginning to end so you can be part of the whole process along the way and sew and stitch with me and just come and chit chat. So thank you guys for coming. Tonight, again, we're doing something a little special like last night. We are going to do some embroidery and we are going to go over how to make a French knot. And if you're having trouble with your French knots, there's probably at least one, if not all three, of three things you might be doing wrong that will be tripping you up. So we'll be going through all those today. So hopefully by the end of the day, you'll be able to do a perfect French knot. And here's an example of the French knot, just like his two little nostrils there and belly button of this monkey. I'm going to be using it as my guide to stitch tonight. The reason we are going over some of these stitches, so last night we went over the chain stitch, and we did it with the zebra. There we go, all the little cute chain stitches. So be sure to check yesterday's video if you want to see that. And then tomorrow we will be doing the satin stitch. So we have the satin stitch in this little alligator guy. Here, all his little back spikes and his teeth are satin stitch. So I think you guys can see up close there. So that'll be tomorrow. And the reason I'm doing this is that I'm actually retiring these three kits. So they are my embroidery kits here. We have the alligator, the monkey, and the zebra. And I am just not going to be printing these ones anymore. So we're having a little special right now, a retirement special for these three guys. There's a bundle on my website, and there's a link below the Penguin and Fish website in the retired products section. There is a bundle for all of them, and if you get the bundle of all three, then you get a surprise $25, at least $25. It'll be a bit more, I'm thinking. Just surprise gift with purchase if you get the bundle of all three. Then if you didn't want all three, you can still get two, and just any two of these retiring kits, and you'll get a $10 surprise gift with purchase. So thank you guys, everyone who's ordered so far. This is going to go through Saturday, so end of the month, and we're done. So end of Saturday, and then the special will go away, basically. And it's just as long as we have kits. So I know we have the least amount of inventory of zebras. So once we run out of zebras, then I'm going to take the bundle down if it gets to that. So just letting you guys know. So we are doing a little embroidery today, the French knot. I did send instructions in emails today. So if you're on my newsletter, you should have received an email. If not, check your spam, check your promotions area, and it will have like detailed photos of how to do the French knot if you want to like look back at it for just really quick reference to that email. And same thing yesterday with the chain stitch, tomorrow with the satin stitch. So check your emails. All right, I'm going to flip you around and we will start stitching. So thank you guys again for joining me here. Okay, little monkey. We are focusing on him today. So I think the three little French knots are kind of a little feature of this guy. I actually have him in the hoop right today in my photos. If you guys got my email with the photos, I accidentally stitched it on this side instead because you can kind of see the iron-on transfer through through the back, so I did it backwards in the thing. Jackie. I am embroidering on an unbleached muslin. I like just like it's a little looser weave than a quilting wig fabric, so you can kind of see you can see where it's woven together like that. For a quilting weight, let's just grab, I have one here from that other project we're working on. So here's a quilting weight fabric. I don't know if you can quite tell, but I mean, obviously these are different colors, but this is woven just a little more tightly than this muslin here. And I mean, you can perfectly fine stitch through a quilting weight fabric like this, but I sometimes like a muslin because, at least a muslin like this, because the needle fits through it a little bit easier. And if you're using a bigger needle or a lot of floss, sometimes on a tightly woven quilting weight, you gotta really pull. And with this muslin, you don't have to at all. All right, so I got in my hoop already, and I got the iron-on transfer. I'm going to just thread my needle here. Just so you guys know, I like the pinch method of threading a needle. So how I do that is, first of all, I snip the ends. We'll just do that quick. So yeah, a really nice clean end. There we go. I'm using 3 strands of floss. This is the same as I used last night, 3 strands of floss, just because I like the thickness that you get, but we can see what it looks like with different strands too, maybe. But all right, so I bring the thread so I can pinch the end like this. So I'm going to pinch it so I can't see it, and then I'm going to slowly unpinch, and the moment I see the little threads there, I'm going to lay the needle, the eye of the needle, on top of the threads and kind of like wiggle it over it a little bit. And then I'm going to continue to pinch my fingers, and it'll kind of bring the threads through a little bit more, and then I will just reach over the other side and grab it. So that's pretty much my go-to method for threading a needle. It's much easier than, holding it out here and trying to get it in. And it's much easier than like wetting it down. I don't like wetting it down. I know a lot of people like going like this. I used to do it like this too, where I kind of fold it over my needle, and I grab it, and then I kind of pull it off. And then you got like a nice sharp bit like that, but then you're still kind of doing the pinching method. And what I don't like about doing that, this over the needle thing, is that now I've doubled the amount of threads. Now instead of having 3 threads, I have 6 threads. So now I gotta figure out how to stuff 6 threads through my needle. Even though I might have like a nice little point from, pushing it against my needle, that's still a lot to stuff through my needle. So I like just going to the end and making sure I have a sharp cut, like just a clean cut. Then I pinch it and slowly unpinch. When I see it, I just get that eye of the needle over there and, grab the end and pull it through. So that's that. I'm going to tie a knot in this end. And then I'm going to actually do a stitch on the front, kind of a little bit away from where we're stitching right now, so that knot won't get in our way on the back when we do the French knot. And we can tuck this thread in later. We went over that a little bit yesterday for the away knot. Okay, so I'm going to walk you guys through how I typically do a French knot, and then we'll do it twice. I'll show you twice with the 2 different nostrils here. But then off to the side here, I'm going to show you 3 things that you might be doing wrong to make the French knot look kind of crazy. And Leslie, based on your comment, you always wrap too many times and your knot gets crazy. I bet you I have a little bit of a solution for you. So we'll see if one of these three things is what you're doing. Okay. So I'm going to do this one here first. And you know what? I'm going to actually get tucked in here a little bit more because one of the things I do like to do, and I mentioned this in the email today, is when I'm doing a French knot, I kind of use both my hands. So if I can set my embroidery on a table or on my lap or something, that's going to help a lot. I know, Gretchen, some people like doing a colonial knot, so that's a little bit different. That might not lean to the side a little bit. All right, so I'm going to do this first French knot here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up on one side of that dot. I'm not going to go right in the middle. I'm going to go on the side. And the reason for that is that I don't want to put my thread back in the same hole. I'm going to spread it across this dot, and that'll make sense in a sec. So I'm going to go on one side of the dot. I'm going to come up. Okay. So with my left hand, I'm going to hold the thread about, I don't know, maybe 2 inches away, 1.5, 2 inches away. So the part of the thread that's going towards the fabric. All right. So I'm going to hold that kind of taut. Then with this hand that's holding the needle, I'm going to point it away from the fabric. So I'm actually kind of pointing it towards my fingers here. So I'm not pointing it towards the fabric. Like I'm not going towards. I'm going away from the fabric, pointing them to these fingers here. So once I have that in position, the pointing away, I'm going to wrap around twice. So I'm still holding this, and we're going to just wrap around. So we got 2 little wraps there. 1, 2. Okay. So these loops don't get away from me, I'm going to put my finger on it. And there we go. I can kind of let go now because it's being held by my finger, those 2 little loops. And now we're pointing the needle away. Now I'm going to point it towards. So I'm just going to rotate my hand down. This thread can go out of our way. I'm going to point it down towards my fabric. So we were pointing away, and now I'm pointing towards. And pointing towards, now I'm going to stick the needle into the fabric on the other side of that dot. So not in the same hole, on the other side. And I notice I'm still holding these threads. All right, I'm going to put my needle in about halfway into the fabric. So I got half the needle on this side, the back of the fabric, and half of the needle here. Once I've done that, once the needle's in there a little bit, now I can let go. So now you can see those are my 2 little loops, and the needle's halfway in, halfway out. I'm still kind of holding the needle in place here. All right, now I'm going to take my left hand again and hold the thread, kind of like how we did before, the part that's going, towards the fabric. And I'm going to slowly pull on that until those threads are against the fabric. They're tight against the needle, like they've wrapped themselves around the needle there, and it's against the fabric. All right. So then I am going to put a finger there, because I don't want these loops to get away from me. So I'm just going to kind of hold it against the fabric. And as I do that, I'm going to pull the needle through and slowly pull the thread through while I'm still holding those loops. And once the thread's all the way through, then I am done, and we have a little French knot there. So there we go. That's how we do a French knot. I'm going to do one again over here for you guys. And then I will go through a few of the things that you might be missing. There's 3 things. I've kind of narrowed it to like 3 things that you might be doing wrong that might be the reason why you can't get your French knot. So just so you know, this is one of the knots that I've heard, this is one of the stitches that more than anything people just get really frustrated with and just can't understand why they can't do it. Or, they might know how to do a bajillion other stitches, but then they just can't get it. So if you're stuck on the French knot, don't worry, you're not alone. And I bet you anything you're doing one of these 3 things wrong. And we'll touch on that next, but let's do this again. All right, so I'm coming up on one side of that dot. We're going to do that second nostril. All right, and then for this part, I like setting it on the table or on your lap. All right, so I'm going to point the needle away. I'm holding that floss there again from my hand to the fabric, pointing the needle away. We're going to wrap around twice. I'm going to grab those threads, and now I'm going to point the needle towards. We're going to stick it in the other side of that hole. Go about halfway, let go. Pull those loops so they're against the needle and the fabric. I'm going to put a finger there, in this case my thumb, because that's how far I can reach with it, and then I'm going to slowly pull that thread through. There we go, 2 very, very cute French knots. Cute. All right, so that is the French knot, you guys. Now here are the things you may be doing wrong. So I'm going to just, let's just go over here, and you know what, I'm going to even draw a few more little dots on here, just so we have the dots as a reference. We'll just do a whole pile of little French knot dots here, okay? Versus just coming up, nowhere in the fabric. So let's start here. Here is the first thing you might be doing wrong. All right, I'm coming up on, and I'm going to do everything else right except for the one thing. So I'm coming up on the one side of the dot. Here's the first thing you might be doing wrong. Pointing the needle towards the fabric. So let's try that. If you do that, if you're pointing the needle towards the fabric, you might still look like you got it going on. You got your loops. I'm going to hold those loops. I'm going to go on the other side of this dot. We're going to pull those loops against the needle and hold the loops and pull it through, but no knot, right? All we've done is make one tiny little stitch. So let's do it away here a little bit. I'm going to even go a little farther away so you can see the stitch a little bit more. There we go. Nothing again, right? And that's because we're not actually making a knot when we're pointing the needle towards the fabric. We're just kind of looping it around, and there's nothing for it to knot up against. We're just kind of making more swirls in here. We have to point the needle the other way to make the knot. So if you are coming up with no knots, you're just ending up with like little itty bitty stitches, that's what's happening. You are pointing the needle towards the fabric instead of away from the fabric. See the difference there? So yeah, so now if we do that, we went away from the fabric. We'll do everything else the same. And there we go. Now we got the knot. So that's pointing towards the fabric. This is pointing away from the fabric. So that is the first thing you may be doing wrong. So if you're ending up with little itty bitty stitches like that, you're pointing the needle in the wrong direction from the get-go. So switch that around and you could be good to go. Okay, so here is the next thing you may be doing. All right, I'm gonna go right up the middle of this next dot here, okay? Instead of coming in from one side to the other, I'm gonna come up right in the middle. We're gonna point the needle away, do our loops, and I'm gonna hold it. But now here's where the error might be coming. So instead of going a few stitches away, like on the other side of the dot, I'm gonna go in the exact same hole. So I'm gonna go in the exact same hole I just went in before. And I'm gonna do everything else the same. Ooh, we're getting a little twisty here. I'm running out of thread. All right, so that might look fine, but what if I give a little tug on it? It's going through the fabric. So we have lost our knot, and we got like a freaking knot on the back here, right? That sucks. So what's happening there? What is going on is that we are going through that same exact hole. So if that hole gets too big, like it is here, that's pretty big, our knot's just going right through. I can even make like the knot like a bunch of loops, right? And if this hole is big enough, oops, if this hole is big enough, we are still going through it. So that's the danger from going through the same hole. Boop. You might pop it right through. So that's why instead I like coming on one side of the fabric, or one side of the dot. There we go, one side of the dot. And then I come down on the other side of the dot. And the reason for that is then I have a couple little pieces of woven thread in between, like the fabric threads. I have a few of those threads in between where I started and where I stopped. And since I'm starting on one side of the dot and ending up on the other side of the dot, I'm kind of covering my bases. I'm like spanning the dot, so my knot will kind of end up right in the middle, and it won't pull through because I have a couple of threads of the background fabric holding it there, right? So now it's not going to pull through. If this pulls through, I'm also breaking my fabric as well. So that could be the second thing you might be doing wrong. Like if you're pulling your knots towards the back, it is because you are putting the needle back in the same hole that you started in. So check on that if you're having any trouble. And then the third thing you might be doing wrong is this. Let's see if I can get it to work. All right, so I'm pointing away, and I'm going to do my 2 loops, point it back towards, and I'm going across, a few threads in the background. All right, I'm pulling it tight, but now here's the third error. Not holding these stitches down. So sometimes I always hold the stitches down as I'm pulling in the needle through the back like this. So I'm going to hold those stitches the whole time. Let's see what happens if I don't do that. I might end up with an okay stitch, but let's see. Oh, that one was fine. So every once in a while it'll be fine. Let's do a few more like that. Okay, there. See how we got some, it's kind of this bloopy loop. There we go. It's not quite a knot. It looks like a couple loops being held down. So it's just not a perfect little round knot. It's kind of loopy, and it can get even worse than this. Let's see if we can make it a worse knot. I'm getting short thread, and it's getting awfully twisty. So we are in the realm of creating a poor knot. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So something like this. That loop is getting away from us. There's no real way to fix it. So if you're having a French knot like that, you're not doing the little thing where you hold down the loop. I know some people do it differently and they end up with perfect French knots, but I like feeling that thread go by my finger and knowing that I'm holding down those loops. So that's the last thing you may be doing wrong. And I suspect that this might be a really common thing. If you're getting to the point that you have knots, but they're all ending up like that, then it's probably because, just a little bit, I'm just holding those loops in place against the fabric, and I'm pulling slowly, even if it's so loopy going through that very twisty thread. There we go. Now it's all happy again. Oh, you hate loopy knots? Yeah. That's the worst because, you can't really, you're kind of stuck with them. That's the one, I think this is why French knots are so frustrating if you can't get them just right, because you can't just snip the thread. Like if I cut this knot off,
then I only have like this tiny little bit of thread here, so I almost have to redo the whole section of French knots to have enough thread to tie a knot or anything, you know what I mean? So you have one, if you got a couple bad ones like that, then that's like a huge bummer, right? Like especially if you're doing a whole area full of French knots. Oh, you love the way the French knots look. Just don't enjoy doing a lot of them, but don't hold too tight, or you can't get the needle through. Yes, so you don't have to hold too tight. I'm actually barely holding it at all. I'm just kind of barely touching those two loops, just so they're not flying off on their own. Oh, MK, you like colonial knots. So, gosh, I'm not even sure I remember quite exactly how to do that. Let's get another piece of. Let's play a little bit. Let's see if I can find another. Oops, sorry, I think I bumped you guys. Here's some floss. Let's do 6 strands of embroidery floss, just because we kind of talked about that a little bit. Oop, puzzles. Let's see what a 6-strand knot looks like. So 6 strands are a little harder to thread because we have 6 strands now instead of 3. This is how embroidery floss typically comes, with 6 strands, and I like separating it to the 3 strands just because I like that thickness of stitch. Like here, like all this is 3 strands. I just like it's half as thick basically. Okay, so let's do one more little French knot here. So I'm going to do one more in the right way. Here, we'll stick that thread right there. Yeah, so French knots can get a little ornery too, and I think who just mentioned this, that they like the look of French knots but don't like doing a lot of them. I hear ya, and I'm the same way, and the reason is, for me at least, is I am always nervous about, my thread getting caught on another French knot. So let's just try and construct that a little bit. So, like, I got another French knot here, and I'm pulling this French knot, and it worked. But, like, if it gets caught on another knot, like, that's super annoying. So if I'm doing a lot of little French knots, like maybe I'm doing like the inside of a flower, and I have lots of French knots like right next to each other. I risk kind of catching another one, right? Like there, that one I caught the one before, so I have to kind of pick it off. So that can get a little annoying, right? Oh yes, so let's see if I can do the colonial knot. I do know how to do a colonial knot. I just don't use it very often, so I got to remember how to do it. I'm imagining it right now. Okay, let's see if this is right. So the colonial knot, some people like this versus the French knot. It holds the knot a little bit differently, but you have to be looking really close to know that. From like the naked eye, it'll look very similar or the same to a French knot, unless you're really digging in and looking at it. So for a colonial knot, you point towards the needle. So that's the big difference. All right, so now don't watch, let me practice. I think I go from one side and then around. Is it something like that? I know it's like one side, and then you kind of do a figure 8. Ooh, gosh, you guys are going to have to let me know. Oh, that looks right. Let's see if that ends up being a knot. Yep, okay, this feels right. Okay, let's see. All right, I think that's it. There we go. That's a colonial knot. So let's do that again. In a little bit. So, all right, for a colonial knot, you point towards. French knot, you're pointing away. Colonial knot, and if I'm doing this wrong, just yell at me. This is what my brain's trying to make me remember right now. So, all right, so I'm pointing towards. I'm kind of going from the left to right, I'm pulling it off to the side, so like that, and I'm gonna hold that little bit right there. And then I think, what did I do last time? Did I come around like this? I think that's it. So now I'm coming around the top of the thread to make the second kind of loop. And it kind of makes a little, we got a little twist in there. And if you pull it a little bit more, it looks like you have two threads there, kind of. I'm going to just hold that. We're going to get down here again, and then I'm going to pull it. This part is what feels a little bit different. You're making kind of like a funny little loopy thing there that it just feels a little bit different than a French knot. And then we're going to pull it. There we go. Let's do one in real time here. Let's see if I can do it. All right, pointing towards, around, and there, holding it, and there. That felt good. Okay. So colonial knot. So I'm going to do a colonial knot here, and I will do a French knot right next to it. So let's see if I have enough thread for that. Okay, so it's just a little bit different of a twist. So here I'm going there, and I'm looping it around that top thread, and now I'm pointing it towards the fabric. I'm still not going in the same hole. I'm still going a couple threads away. I'm still, pulling it tight, and I'm still holding it here. So all that's the same. I might have made that one look funny. That's fine. All right, I'm going to do a French knot right next to it, and we'll just take a look. Oh, the thread will never go through the fabric. You still don't want to, you still want a couple little threads in between. I would still never go in the exact same hole because, let's say you wash it or your fabric gets really stretched out for some reason. If you create a big enough hole in there, in your fabric there, I mean, no matter what knot you do, it's gonna go through there. So I would still err on the side of going, just a thread or two over like that. Then you at least have a little protection there. All right, so that was the colonial knot. Let's do the French knot. So French knot, pointing away, twist, hold those loops, and then turn towards it. Hold that in place still. All right. So let's just take a look at this a little bit. So here is the colonial knot, and I don't think I did it very well there. I might do one more. But here's the French knot. So I think one nice thing, these are all colonial knots too. One nice thing about the colonial knot, and again, maybe I didn't make them very pretty here. I need some practice on them. But I think one thing you avoid, let's do it this way. One thing you avoid is that sometimes with a French knot, like let's try and tug on this a little bit, you might end up, kind of like this guy over here, where it looks like you just have one little stitch and then these kind of loops hanging off of it. Like it might look like you have like two little loops just hanging out. Like here, you can kind of see if we just pick at this a little bit. This is the French knot that we have like kind of loops hanging up here, just being held by a little stitch. So you might be getting that little feel to it. That's yours, Gretchen. Gretchen, I would definitely try holding it a little bit more when you pull it. But yeah, so like if I futz with this one, you got some hanging loops like that. I think you're gonna avoid that with the colonial knot because you got like the twist of them. These loopies are in a different position, basically. So let's do one more. Oh, I need to have some thread on that needle for that to work. All right, so we'll do a colonial knot right next to it, and I'll try and maybe make it a little bit better. Let's see if I can improve on it. All right, towards and forward. Maybe if I just get a little tighter on there. Oh, yes. So, Gretchen, if those loops are too big, then they will, like, kind of lean. All right, here we go. That's a good-looking one. So I just, I left less slack on my needle, like So here, that is a good looking colonial knot. I don't have any like loose bits really anywhere. But yeah, so that's the difference. I don't, with the French knot, you might have those like loopies that just look like big loops just being held on by a tiny little stitch. You kind of avoid that with colonial knot. So that's a good looking, it even looks, like it's got like 3 little knot parts there. So that is the deal. That is a colonial knot versus a French knot. Typically, yeah, it is really pretty. I should maybe try and doing those more often. I think people who are just I think you're gonna see in instructions and stuff French knots. I'm gonna do another colonial knot. You're gonna see French knots more often, so it's good to know. But yeah, this is a great alternative. I gotta say, this is uncomfortable for me right now, like pointing towards, just because my hand is so used to going this direction that it feels goofy. Like I feel like I don't have my hand positions worked out just right for this yet. But once I do 100 of them, then I'm sure it'll be okay. So again, I'm going from left to right, pointing towards. This is the colonial knot. Left to right, making kind of a, backwards C. And then I'm gonna loop it around my back a little bit. So you're almost creating like a little bit of a figure 8 there, like half of a figure 8. So needle the center, and then over this top thread that's closest to you. Okay? And now I'm gonna, I'm not even gonna hold those. I'm just gonna put the needle in, and I'm gonna kind of pull on it. Here's where I made the change from here. So it's kind of like a lot of thread on the front end, so I'm just pulling it a little bit this way instead of this way to just kind of use up more of that loose thread. And now I'm gonna pull it down, and I think that tightened that first little part. Yep, so there we go. Oh, a cute little colonial knot. Do one more French knot. Oh gosh, I'm gonna get confused now. All right, pointing away. That's the big difference, is the pointing away versus pointing towards. But remember, like a colonial knot, you're not gonna get that knot unless you do that extra little bit. Oh, the French knots look a little bit more like a flower to you. It has a middle. Oh, that's kind of true. Yeah, so if you look close, we're holding down those loops, but if those loops are laying on their side there, then you're right. We do have like a little kind of hole in there. See, do we have that on some of our other French knots? It depends how it's laying, but yeah, if those 2 loops are being held down, then we do have a cute, like right here, a cute little kind of hole in the middle there. That's kind of fun. Yeah, this is a good example of it right here versus this. So if you want to get real picky on what you want your knots to look like oh, I don't want this little hole thing. I want it to look like this. Then there you go. You got a variation on the French knot to get a different look. I'm going to do another colonial knot. So here, this is the part that you got to remember with the colonial knot, though. Like, if you go to the side like this, you're not done. So if you're just, like, making 2 loops here, then you're going to end up with that French knot problem where you're just making a stitch. So that is not right for a colonial knot. You have to do this first one, and here's what makes it a knot. You're going around that piece right there. So we're kind of splitting it, and you have this thread by the fabric and this thread to the finger. We have to go around back that thread by the finger. Then we have our knot. If you're just making a couple loops pointed towards the needle, or with the needle pointed towards the fabric, you're going to end up with this one little stitch like we did for the French knot. Fun! All right, I could get used to doing those too, that's for sure. Fun little colonial knots. But yeah, you guys, so I think... Oh, French knots are innies and colonials are outies. There you go. I mean, it's kind of true. Look at it, that's kind of cute. For funny. I bet you it would be interesting to see a whole mass of French knots next to, like, maybe like a circle and like split down the middle, like all one side French knots and all one side colonial knots. I'd be interested to see how different they look then in a group like that. I bet you could tell. I bet you it would be very obvious that these are different than these versus just looking at it one on one. That's maybe a little bit more difficult. But both very cute. But again, so if you're going for that French knot, remember those three things that you might be doing wrong, and it's the pointing towards the needle to make your two loops instead of away. You're not going to get that knot formation, and you'll just get a little stitch. It's going through the same hole, and then, your knot might be pulled. It might not, but it could get pulled all the way to the back, and then you don't have any knot on there anymore. It just got pulled to the back. And the third is not holding down the thread against the fabric. I mean, you don't have to really push. I'm just literally just kind of making sure they don't get away. I'm not really putting any pressure on it. But yeah, just holding them down so you don't end up with your loops getting away from you. So try those three things. The blue floss. So this is DMC. I believe the number is 799. That sounds a little familiar to me. So I think it's DMC 799. That sounds right. 799. Let's go with that. All right. So there we are, guys. I'm going to flip you guys around, and I think we'll call it a night here. If you guys have any questions on, if you're practicing these French knots and something comes up, or the colonial knots, let me know. I'll be here tomorrow. We'll be doing the satin stitch. So tomorrow is these pretty little shiny satin stitches, and it's all over this black satin stitch, the beak, the teeth, and the back legs. There's a lot of satin stitch on this little alligator. So we'll kind of go over that, and we'll go over a couple other ways to do a couple other versions of a satin stitch. So that'll be kind of fun, I think. So, good, Leslie. I'm glad that helped. Yeah, give it a try. I'm sure a lot of these things look awfully familiar. But yeah, and then give that colonial knot a try too, and let me know what you think of that versus the French knot, or if you're having any trouble with either, let me know. You can let me know in the group or the Penguin and Fish Crafters group, and I'll be here tomorrow as well. Or give me an email. All right, you guys, I'm going to flip you around, and we'll call it an evening here. Alrighty, hello again. So that colonial knot is just kind of fun. It's one of those, I think it's extra fun to me because I haven't done it very much. So it feels, I love learning new things, so it's got that little edge of a thrill yet of, this is like a new superpower. I didn't know how to do this, you know what I mean? So it has that feel still, which makes it a little bit fun for me. But I do like a good little French knot as well. Oh, you guys, one thing I was going to mention with the French knot about, it being tough someone mentioned about it being hard to fill a whole area or doing a lot of French knots. And for me, it was because threads get caught on the knots. When I'm doing an embroidery, I will typically save the French knots to last if I can. And it's for that exact reason. If I'm stitching with some other stitches somewhere around and I have these bumpy French knots in my way, I don't want to accidentally catch one of the French knots with my thread for wherever else I'm stitching on the piece. It's kind of the same problem as why I don't like knots on the back of the embroidery, kind of how we talked last night with weaving in the ends. It's that same phenomenon, you'll get your thread just caught on it, and then you might deform the French knot, and you might not even see it, and then you realize I had my thread caught on that French knot. So when I can, I leave that to the last, so I don't have anything. I'm less likely to catch things on it. But all right, you guys, I am going to head out for the night then. Tomorrow we will do
the satin stitch. And then remember, we're doing that bundle, that retirement bundle for these 3 kits. I'm not going to reprint them anymore. Little zebra. I actually have the least amount of the zebras, so once the zebras go, then I will, the bundle will kind of go away, because I won't have zebras left for the bundle. And the deal is, again, you get a surprise, at least $25 gift with purchase when you get the whole bundle. So click the link below if you're interested in that. I know it's almost finished at Friday. It's almost the first Friday of the month. Can you believe that? That is next week, people. Crazy. That means it's fall for sure if we're in September. All right, you guys. I will get this up on YouTube at Penguin and Fish Movies, and then I will see you tomorrow night. So have a great evening. Good night.